Just a warning, this episode contains content that may be distressing to some listeners.
So I'm outside the Perth Magistrates Court. It's a modern building in the centre of the city. Like every morning here, there's lots going on. There's lots of people walking around. A few people are hugging now in front of me. Lawyers are easy to spot as well in their suits, very well dressed.
On the morning of January 14th, 2025, Robbie Giuffre climbed the steps of the Perth Magistrates Court. He was there to get a family violence restraining order against his wife, Virginia Giuffre. He was just one of thousands of people who go there every year for a family violence restraining order. The court is one of the busiest in Western Australia for these sorts of orders, and demand for them is on the rise. There's also a whole court here dedicated just to family violence matters.
Everyone's stressed. They're either there with their families or by themselves. Most people are just sitting and waiting on their phones, so they're waiting for a hearing.
Like many services in WA, the court is under strain from the sheer scale of domestic violence. WA police attend about 80,000 call-outs each year, or one every 6 minutes. In 2024, the Australian Bureau of Statistics found the state had Australia's worst rate of family and domestic assaults.
It made me realise just how many domestic violence cases are going through the court every single day.
When Robbie got inside this building that January morning, it was just hours after a restraining order against him had expired. Police had put the temporary order on him after a violent incident between him and Virginia. But that information wasn't disclosed to the magistrate. Instead, without Virginia's knowledge of this hearing happening at all, he told them that she posed a risk to him and also to their children. The magistrate heard his case and granted him the order, which banned her from seeing her 2 youngest children for 6 months. Inside this building, every day, judges make decisions that have life-changing consequences. For Virginia, this one was especially devastating.
She loved her children more than anything in this world.
And in that time, she didn't have her children.
I mean, she'd been through a lot, but taking her kids was more than she could deal with.
I'm Carla Hildebrandt.
And I'm Mel Fyfe.
From the newsrooms of The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald and WA Today.
This is Virginia, Episode 3, Mummy Still Loves You. In this episode, we take you into the last 4 months of Virginia's life. We examine the police response to a violent incident between Robbie and Virginia, and how Virginia ended up losing access to her 2 youngest children for 6 months. But before we do that, we need to go back in time a little. How did their family life in Perth end in such a bitter place? A separation that involved police, lawyers, and restraining orders. At the end of last episode, the family were in Cairns, and although Robbie had a history of violence and was sometimes jealous and volatile in public, there were also happy times. Linda Freitag, Virginia's close friend from that time, you might remember she had a pet lorikeet.
These 2 crazy bird ladies.
She told us that when the couple lived in Queensland, Virginia was strong enough to meet the strength of Robbie's big personality.
You know, it was a functional marriage. They seemed happy enough. They had their normal fights like any marriage does.
But when Linda and her family holidayed with Virginia and Robbie in Perth, she saw things had taken a turn for the worse.
We wanted to all go for lunch together before our flight back, and he didn't want her to come, and he whinged and nagged at her and put her down for hours. She put her foot down and said she really wanted to come, and they followed us in the car, and by the time we got 5 minutes around the corner to the place we're having lunch, they did a screeching U-turn in the car park, and he took her back home. And I think she spent the rest of the afternoon crying before we jumped on our flight. So
Linda says Robbie's reason for keeping Virginia at home that day was her health. Remember, at this point, as we mentioned in the last episode, Virginia had fallen and broken her neck. Despite surgery, she still had constant neck pain and was on strong painkillers. Also in Perth, it seemed she couldn't catch a break. She had bouts of pneumonia, staph infections, surgery for ovarian cysts, among other things. My body seemed to be staging a revolt, she said in her memoir. But even though Robbie claimed to be protecting her, Linda wasn't convinced.
I'm not entirely sure. It was just a lot to do with control with Robbie. Everything was controlled.
I'm not going so well. Physically, I'm okay. But I've been basically kicked out of the house and I'm heading to the ranch. We'll call you when I can. I love you and miss you so much.
That's Virginia texting her mother on Australia Day, less than a year before the couple separated. These are texts that Virginia's family has given us. Virginia's Americanisms come out when she texts her mum. By ranch, she means her farm in Near Gabby, about an hour's drive north of where they lived in Perth. It was a special place for Virginia. Here's our colleague Cass again.
4:55 a.m., Monday, April 29th, 2024. I'm staying here at the ranch. Rob and I got into a very heated argument, and it did not end well. 11:35 a.m., Sunday, November 3rd, 2024. Hey, Mom. I know you're probably sleeping, and I wouldn't disturb you except to let you know that I'm safe and he's left. Sleep well, my beautiful mama. Love heart emoji.
Virginia's brothers also gave us copies of the diary notes found in her bedroom at the farm after she took her life. They are undated, but believed to be written after her separation from Robbie in the early months of 2025. The plain, lined notebook pages are filled with the loops of Virginia's cursive writing as she reflects on the past and makes sense of what is happening to her. We cannot confirm that each of these allegations is true, but these are Virginia's words expressing how she felt at the time.
Robert's behavior became more controlling. The stronger I became, the scarier he became. I tried calmly talking to him about seeking help through a therapist or anger management, which only angered him more.
Sometimes in her diaries and notes, Virginia just writes key words or quick observations.
Friends have noticed a change in my demeanor as I stopped taking calls in fear of what would happen if I tried to get help. Manifesting in small ways at first, monitoring my daily activities, questioning, self-doubt. Success is a threat, showing unease in my finding independence. Instead of praising his wife's accomplishments, he began to be jealous, trying to make me stop advocating for victims of trafficking. Throughout this period, my commitment to Rob has never wavered as he constantly accused me of being unfaithful on an almost daily basis. On the surface, everything looked okay. However, under this picture-perfect facade started showing tensions. Subtle changes started to appear and increased signs of his possessiveness. Saying his best mates were trying to sleep with me. Not allowed to go downstairs when any mate was over. And that was every day. I became a prisoner.
She was the strongest person I knew.
This is Linda Freitag again.
Whereas when I, spoke to her on the phone or when we were over in Perth physically, she was no longer that strong person anymore. Her will had been eroded.
During this time in Perth, Virginia was like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. She came into a lot of money during this period, and outwardly, the family had all the trappings of wealth, including a palatial beachfront home in the Perth suburb of Ocean Reef. It's quite a flashy residence, with sea views, 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a pool. We've been given a document that reveals all of Virginia's confidential payments. When we tallied them up, they came to the equivalent of $25 million US. She received money from Ghislaine Maxwell, from the Epstein Victims Compensation Program, and from a class action against JP Morgan Chase. The victims in that case had argued that the bank had knowingly facilitated Epstein's sex trafficking. But the biggest payment of all came in 2022, the settlement with the man formerly known as Prince Andrew. That one was $10 million.
The final chapter in a sex scandal that's rocked the royal family.
An out-of-court settlement with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
Queen's son avoiding a gruelling trial by jury.
Queen is reportedly spending millions to fund her son's legal fight.
Further embarrassment for the monarchy in the Queen's Jubilee year. But many see the hefty payout as an admission. At Virginia Giuffre's Perth home today, flowers from supporters.
I don't think they represent modern Britain at all anymore.
Not all of Virginia's legal cases were successful. In 2022, she signed a settlement with lawyer Alan Dershowitz, saying that although she'd long believed she was trafficked to him by Epstein, she now recognised that she, quote, may have made a mistake. Supporters of the former Prince Andrew jumped on this as evidence that she was an unreliable witness. As we'll find out in the next episode, that wouldn't be the last time that they called her integrity into question.
Virginia's settlements meant Robbie didn't have to work. In fact, he hadn't worked since 2017. He'd later describe himself in a court document as a stay-at-home father. Meanwhile, Virginia was generous with her money. She gave it away to family and friends. She splurged on quad bikes and jet skis. She bought a boat for Robbie. Here's Sky and Amanda.
At least from what I knew about my sister, I don't think it was really her trying to live this lavish lifestyle. But certainly like any good parent would want, they'd want to provide their kids with, some luxuries out there. And fun, right?
She was a fun person. Her kids loved hunting. They loved being on the ATVs and she enjoyed being able to do those things with them. Yeah. But at the core of her, she really just...
But she also spoiled herself. She loved the nice things in life, especially jewellery. With her Prince Andrew settlement, she bought a blue sapphire ring.
And she was like, and I wear it on my middle finger as an FU to the royals.
But for all the money Virginia had, the medical expenses and trauma she detailed in her lawsuits were, she said, real.
Just as an outsider looking in, there's no money in the world that was worth the trauma it brought up for her.
Certainly money made little difference to Virginia when she hit rock bottom in early 2022. She'd been hospitalised with a bad bout of COVID. She was worn out from her near-constant pain in her neck. At night, she was still haunted by the nightmares of her past abuse. During the day, there were online attacks calling her a liar, sellout, whore. As she writes in her memoir, she tried to overdose on pills in hospital. She was revived, went home and tried again to overdose. Her elder son found her, saving her life.
After that, it would be a long time before my thoughts of self-annihilation would truly begin to subside. Only then could I promise my husband and kids that I would try with all my might to believe that I mattered.
In early 2024, Virginia had a serious accident with her daughter Ellie on a quad bike. And remember, we've chosen not to use her real name because she's a minor. Virginia was driving the quad when they hit a tree. Ellie had to have 2 lots of surgery to fix her broken jaw.
That's where she really, really hurt her neck. Her daughter was also hurt in that crash. She felt awful about it.
That's Danny, Virginia's half-brother.
I was like, well, how's Robbie taking this? Oh, you hurt your daughter. You're a bad mom. Look at what you did. And I was like, well, were you drinking? Is there any drugs? And she said, no. And they tested me. Whenever something like that happens and somebody's hurt. And it was just an accident.
The accident compounded Virginia's already painful neck and spine issues.
But that's when she said, look, I'm really hurt now. All the stuff that I had already gotten fixed and I was still in pain and I still have nerve damage. Now it's going to be worse.
A year later, Virginia still was not a well person. She'd been diagnosed with a degenerative spinal issue. She had the chronic pain condition, fibromyalgia, and serious gynecological problems. As she headed into the last 4 months of her life, she had a full-time carer. She was prone to falls because her legs would sometimes just give way. She was often in a wheelchair.
Virginia could barely walk. She was in a very, very bad physical condition at that point. And she'd have to be in bed for the most part of the day. So if she had like a really good day where she was mobile, the next day she was down for like almost the entire day.
In October 2024, a few months before everything finally blew up between the couple, Virginia reached out to Dale King, the sheriff you heard from last episode. He led the team of Colorado detectives at the time of Robbie's domestic violence assault charge in 2015. Dale said Virginia asked him for help.
And he's abusing her again. And I believe she sent me pictures that time. But her thing was, will you talk to the law enforcement here or the prosecutors here? And I was like, I'd be more than happy. My number, have them call me.
We've also seen a text about this incident from Virginia to one of our other sources. About 2 months later, another incident happened at their Ocean Reef home. Virginia wrote about it in one of the documents we've obtained. It's undated and headed Family Violence Application.
I could tell Rob was getting worked up, following me around the house and being argumentative. After making several attempts to back away from him, I decided to calm things down. I would go to the farm. Upon entering the bedroom to pack, Rob followed, leaving me no alternative but to leave the room. On leaving, I noticed my daughter on the upper veranda and decided to join her, whereby Rob followed, getting right in my face and calling me a whore. On looking to my side, I noticed my daughter's face go pale, her jaw drop, and a shocked look. My instinct was a sense of preservation and to show my daughter it's not acceptable, and I just struck out, to which he then called the police, and I was served with a 72-hour notice.
In WA, police can issue on-the-spot restraining orders for 72 hours. They're like a cooling-off notice. They provide immediate but temporary protection in a family violence situation. Virginia didn't know it then, but this 72-hour order would soon be used against her to devastating effect.
So I'm in Dunsborough in WA southwest. So it's where Busselton meets Dunsborough. I'm driving down Geograph Bay Road. It's a beautiful sunny day, like it would have been in January when Virginia was here with her family. Massive, extravagant houses along this beach road.
January 9th was kind of like the day.
That's Sky again, Virginia's little brother, and Amanda, Sky's wife, you can hear in the background. Sky's talking about the holiday Virginia planned with her daughter Ellie to Dunsborough, almost 3 hours south of Perth. Originally, it was going to be just a mother and daughter trip, a celebration of Ellie's birthday.
I'm just walking down this path that would have been right next to their holiday home. So it's about 50 metres from the beach. 50-metre walk.
They had this whole trip planned out. They were going to go, and it was supposed to be a girls' weekend. She was very, very, very excited for it. I remember that conversation.
So there's beach for as far as the eye can see, and there's no one here, so it's very private. It's beautiful.
And then it turned into her daughter wanted her brothers to be there. Very understandable. But then that made Rob be a part of it. So that made her husband be a part of that trip. And I think that caught Virginia off guard. But she wanted to do it for her daughter, right? She was like, okay, I'm not going to be like the Debbie Downer. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go. I'm going to suck it up and do it. They definitely weren't together at that point. They were going through some marriage struggles and starting to enter the phase of divorce, but not there quite yet.
We don't actually know when Virginia and Robbie decided to separate. Virginia had been spending more time at the farm. What we do know is that they both nominated January 9, 2025 as the end of their marriage. So what exactly unfolded that day at the beach house in Dunsborough? Well, there are two versions, Robbie's and Virginia's. We'll come to Robbie's side of the story, which he will later record in a court document. But let's start with Virginia's version, as she told it to family and friends. Virginia told those closest to her that around 11 p.m, Robbie, who she says had been drinking, argued with Ali about the music she was playing on her new karaoke machine. Their son's then girlfriend challenged Robbie and he threw her out of the house. This girl, who we've decided not to name, was 16 or 17 at the time. Remember, this is late at night at a beach house down an isolated road in a coastal town hours from Perth. Concerned about the girl, Virginia paid for a cab back to a suburb north of Perth, which would have cost her around $350. A source independent of Virginia has confirmed that Robbie kicked out this girl that night. Then, in Virginia's version of the story, Robbie turned his attention to her.
Long story short, Rob wanted to have some sort of sexual inclination. She was like, I'm not into it. She was trying to just kind of deflect and not make it a big deal. And Rob made it a very big deal at that point, from my understanding. It got physical, I got violent, and he is a trained martial artist, so he knows positions. And my understanding is that he put her in some sort of position where he ended up cracking Virginia's sternum.
While he was kind of like strangling her, but in that position, he also was hitting her with the other hand, from my understanding. So he had her like pressed down. She had passed out, but she did say there was blood on the sheets and that the police officers took the sheets as evidence.
We couldn't get access to Virginia's health records, and the police won't talk to us about their investigation. So we can't confirm the cracked sternum or bloody sheets. In the morning, local police from Busselton interviewed Virginia. We understand they took photos of her injuries. They advised her to go to the local hospital. Robbie and the kids left, but sometime on January the 10th, police served him with a 72-hour restraining order. Virginia FaceTimed Sky and Amanda to tell them her version of what happened. And she called her ghostwriter Amy Wallace. Amy had been working on Virginia's memoir for 4 years, and they were close. Later, when the book was released, Amy would write in the preface that Virginia was in a state of extreme distress. Virginia told Amy that Robbie had assaulted her the night before, and then she sent her photos of her face, which appeared discoloured and swollen. On that same day, Virginia and Robbie were both trying to withdraw money from their shared accounts. Virginia told family and friends that she was afraid Robbie would drain their funds, so she made a multi-million-dollar withdrawal from their shared account. She left Robbie with enough money, a cushion as she described it to family, to survive on. She took herself to Busselton Hospital, and that night at 8:55 p.m, she texted her mother in Colorado.
Mommy, please call me when you're awake. Rob did it again. I'm in the hospital, and I need your voice to help me calm down.
So, Carla, we've got these photos of Virginia, which were given to us by her brothers.
That's right, and we've checked the timestamps in the metadata of the pictures, and they were taken over a couple of days between January 12th and January 15th in 2025.
They're quite confronting pictures. Virginia looks tired and defeated, really. She has a black eye, her right eye, and a bruise over her left eye, and other injuries like bruising across her chest and face. And the metadata in these pictures also tells us something else, like she's actually hotel hopping.
So she was staying in various hotels in Perth, the Crown Plaza and a Quest Hotel.
And sometime after we got these photos, Virginia's sister-in-law Amanda gave us some texts from Virginia that date to around this time. And in one of them, dated 11th of January, Amanda is giving Virginia advice. She says, be careful, see your lawyer, make sure you go and get all your vital documents. And she asks Virginia if she can go into some sort of protective custody.
So Virginia's response is really interesting. She texts back, I hear you, sis, but over here DV, she means domestic violence, is so easy to get out of. It's not like the States, where he was arrested and jailed. That's why I'm going to the tippy top of the police department and I'll let him see my neck, face, back, etc.
Yes, the tippy top of police. We were stumped by this. Like, did she go to the higher levels of police command?
I know. Well, we asked police, but they didn't answer our questions because they've decided not to talk to us about this case. Then we have, a couple of days later, a text from Virginia to Amanda telling her about how she's trying to evade Robbie by hotel hopping.
She says that she's staying in a Crown hotel and there are lots of them. So, quote, it would be difficult for him to find me.
Then she tells Amanda that she's going to court today, that's January 14, to get a restraining order on Robbie. But she never got to file that application.
That's right, because in only a few hours, Robbie would get there first.
So I'm outside the Perth Magistrates Court. He walked up these steps on a Tuesday morning, the 14th of January.
It's important to say that when Robbie went to the Perth Magistrates Court on January the 14th, he was within his legal rights to apply for an interim family violence restraining order. In WA and in courts around Australia, these emergency or interim civil orders are designed so that people in genuine fear of violence can quickly get protection. They don't always stop domestic abusers, but police do try to enforce the orders, and breaches are a criminal offence. For some victim survivors, they may mean the difference between life and death. That's why they don't require the victim to provide a high level of evidence, like other court hearings do. And to make it extra safe for the applicant, they are done in the absence of the alleged abuser. This is called an ex parte hearing. That's why Virginia had no idea what Robbie was about to do on the morning of January the 14th, 2025. The process did not require that she be notified or attend. All Robbie needed to do was fill out a yellow application form and submit a supporting affidavit setting out why he needed a family violence restraining order. Then he had to put his case to a magistrate. Robbie's affidavit, which we've obtained, is 7 pages long. He has written his answers in the boxes provided in messy handwriting with crossed out bits and spelling mistakes. He lists himself as a stay-at-home father. On the first page, there's an important question. Have there been any police orders issued against Virginia? And to this, Robbie answers, yes, approximately 4 weeks ago. So that dates back to the incident we mentioned earlier, when Virginia admitted she, quote, struck out at Robbie when she says that he was following her around the house and then called her a whore in front of their daughter. Robbie had called the police and they had issued Virginia with a 72-hour restraining order. But remember, at this moment, at the Magistrates Court on the 14th of January, Robbie had only just come off his own 72-hour restraining order. It was probably only a matter of hours, possibly half a day, since his restraining order had expired. But the form has no question that asks the applicant, Robbie, whether he's had any order against him. There's also no question about prior domestic violence charges against the applicant, so the Colorado incident is never mentioned either. Then Robbie is asked to provide a general description of Virginia's behaviour. We've asked a colleague to voice what he wrote.
I'm scared for myself and my kids' safety. My spouse has been both physically, mentally and emotionally abusive and financially to myself and my kids. My spouse suffers from mental health issues, has been admitted into mental hospitals numerous times. She has attempted suicide on numerous occasions with kids present. I'm fearful that my spouse will once again come assault and harass myself and my kids, both physically and emotionally again.
We just want to pause here for a second and talk about mental health, because Virginia is not the first woman to be accused of being mentally unstable and therefore unfit to be a mother. Virginia was upfront about her mental health battles. She wrote about them in her book. She detailed the 2022 suicide attempts we've already mentioned, when she was saved when her eldest son came to check on her. Sky and Amanda have told us that after this occasion, she was psychologically assessed and had to stay in hospital for a short while. We know of an episode in 2023 when she suffered from suicidal ideation and spent several days in a mental health ward. We also know of a suicide attempt in 2024. Sky and Amanda also say that Virginia was clear that a number of things played a role in her mental health struggles, including her childhood abuse, her years with Epstein, and Robbie's treatment in their marriage. But back to the form that Robbie submitted for the restraining order. He was asked if there was any specific incident he would like the court to know about. He said there was physical and emotional abuse on a holiday last week, and Virginia had assaulted him. When asked how this incident affected him, he said he suffered scratches and bruising to the head. He was constantly in fear and anxious she would return to the house and assault him again. The form asks if this incident was reported to the police, and he ticks that box. He indicated that he didn't receive any medical attention, and he cites the police report number for the Dunsborough incident. Then he goes into more detail about it. This is really where we get to hear Robbie's version of what happened at the holiday house on the night of January 9.
We went to bed, we're having a conversation, and the conversation led to an argument, and then she started physically assaulting me with headbutts, punching, scratching, hammer fist and spitting. I was trying to protect myself by covering my face, and as soon as I had a chance to flee, I did, and then sought to protect my children and told them to pack to leave in the morning.
On the next page, where he's asked about the children, he says that he's the primary carer and describes Virginia as manipulative and unpredictable. He says that she has put, quote, my children in harm's way to the point that one of them required 2 surgeries. We can only guess that he's referring here to the incident in January 2024, when Virginia was driving a quad bike with Ali on the back and they ran into a tree. Ali needed surgery on her jaw. With the form done, the next step for Robbie was to argue his case before a magistrate. If he was looking to get the order quickly, he'd come to the right place. Perth Magistrates Court, unlike many other courts around WA, has enough judges to ensure a same-day hearing. Soon he was called into a room to put his argument to Magistrate Lynette Diaz. What was said in that courtroom is only known to a few people. We tried to get the transcript, but the court refused us twice. But one of the people who does know is Nick Terry.
So I'm a criminal lawyer. I've been practicing criminal law for about 15 odd years, and I run my own practice here in Fremantle, and we've got offices in the city as well.
Virginia engaged Nick Terry to object to the family violence restraining order against her. As part of that process, he was given a transcript of the hearing and knows what Robbie said to the magistrate on January 14. It was excruciating for Mel and I to hear this, but due to court rules, he's not allowed to give us the transcript. But Nick was willing to talk to us about the restraining order within his professional and ethical limits.
Afterwards.
Yeah, perfect.
So I went to interview him in his Fremantle office.
Do you know how long the hearing was?
Very short. And they usually are.
You can hear Nick flicking through the transcript document here that we'd love to see, just to get a bit more insight into how the court works and how these important decisions are made.
It was probably around, between 10 and 15 minutes. So it's really just a brief account that's given. And as I say, that's often the case because the magistrates are dealing with huge numbers of these. So in his application, he refers to having the incident that had recently just unfolded having been reported to the police, but questions weren't asked or it wasn't made clear to the magistrate that Virginia actually reported it to the police and that obviously that police order was issued. So it was literally like hours essentially after the police order had expired that he's down in the court applying for an interim family violence restraining order against her. So the magistrate doesn't know that there's been this 72-hour order where he's been the bound person up until that point in time. So really the magistrate can only decide the matter on the basis of the evidence presented. And unfortunately in this case, the evidence certainly wasn't a complete picture of what had taken place. And there were very material parts that have been omitted in that account.
On January 21st, Nick met Virginia at the hotel she was staying at to discuss the restraining order objection. And there was someone with her.
I loved caring for Virginia. She was like the daughter I never had.
Cheryl Myers was Virginia's carer for the last 18 months of her life.
I loved her with all my heart, but yeah, I sincerely did love her, but she was being abused by everybody. Everybody.
You'll hear a lot more from Cheryl next episode because she's the missing part of the puzzle when we were piecing together Virginia's side of the story. Because from this point, when Robbie gets the restraining order, Virginia becomes increasingly isolated, and the only person consistently in her life and by her side is Cheryl. Anyway, back to the hotel where Nick was making his first impressions of Virginia.
She was seeking refuge at that time in a hotel with her carer because she had concerns for her safety if she was to return to the family farm, which was separate from where Robert was living. She was, quite physically frail. She was in a wheelchair at that time. Look, she was really sweet. She seemed really lovely, really genuine, but also seemed, very frightened and concerned about what was going on, and being separated from her children obviously was at the front of her mind.
Cheryl recalled when they first found out about the order. The police called to ask where they were and came to their hotel.
Look, the VRO, she was in total shock, so was I. We were in a hotel the day it came and the police knocked on the door. We were literally in shock.
Nick lodged an objection to Robbie's restraining order on the same day he met Virginia and Cheryl, January 21st.
And the matter's not listed for a final order hearing until 11th of July 2025. So you're talking about 6 months from the interim order being served to having a final order hearing.
So just to spell that bit out, Virginia had to wait 6 months to get a court date to object to an interim order that lasted for 6 months. Nick said her other legal options, like applying to cancel the order, would probably take the same time. That meant for 6 months, despite her objection, Virginia was barred from seeing her youngest children as she waited for a final order hearing. The children were 15 and 17 at the time.
The major problem I have with the system is that we deliberately make these barriers low, but then because of the volume of matters coming through, you've got this extraordinary long delay. And in the meantime, the effect that has on people, particularly say in this case, which, the effect of the restraining order was to, prevent her from going to the family home, prevent her from seeing 2 of her children. For that to be in place for 6 months, despite the fact that she objected, very, very soon after the interim order was made, shows how significant the effect of these interim orders can be.
A statement released to us by Robbie's lawyer says, due to Virginia's behaviour in January 2025, it was necessary for the courts to impose protective measures to safeguard Robert and the children from harm. We've now given you, as best we can, Robbie's version of what happened on January 9 and Virginia's side. Both allege violence occurred. However, what happened with the restraining order raises issues more broadly about the way in which these matters are dealt with by police and the court system. Domestic violence expert and law professor Heather Douglas says that one of these issues is misidentification. She says misidentification happens when the victim is wrongly named as the perpetrator. It happens most commonly to Indigenous women and women from culturally diverse backgrounds. And Heather's speaking generally here, not specifically about Virginia and Robbie's case.
We've seen a lot of problems with misidentification and with a failure by both police and magistrates to really look into the background of cases to determine really what's going on and to ask the right questions about things and to check the records.
Heather says misidentification happens in 2 contexts. One's when police attend an incident and they struggle to distinguish between the victim survivor and the primary aggressor. And it happens in court where the magistrate focuses on a single isolated incident rather than the broader picture. There's not a lot of good national data about misidentification in Australia. It is, though, an issue that impacts women more. Domestic violence researchers know this because restraining orders are consistently taken out on women at a higher rate than the number of women arrested for family violence.
We talk increasingly about this notion of image management and how abusers are really good at managing their image. So they can present themselves in a really clear, rational, coherent way to a court. They can tell a story in a really linear, organised way. Whereas we actually see the opposite with a person who's been abused. We see that they might seem and appear chaotic, fearful, nervous, perhaps not telling their story in a really coherent way. Their stories are often not linear. They might have blocked bits of them out because of the fear they create when they rethink them.
In Virginia and Robbie's case, Heather says the magistrate should have asked more questions and had more access to information about the whole pattern of violence in the relationship.
Yeah, look, I think that those kinds of records should be available to a magistrate making a decision. I also appreciate the need for making these decisions quickly and erring on the side of caution, because mostly it is women applying for these orders and they do need protection. But misidentification is becoming a real thing, and magistrates really need to be aware of that and thinking about that and asking some questions. But what I'm particularly concerned about with this one is the lack of contact with the children. And that's the surprising thing for me. And I would have thought there should have been much more care taken by a magistrate in terms of thinking about what's best for these children, and whether that might have been more experienced people in this realm, say someone from Child Protective Services to check on these kids and maybe ask around and find out what the history is. And even though they're older, may have been an appropriate thing to do. That really has long-term implications, and it obviously had extraordinary implications for the victim in this case.
The magistrate's inclusion of the order is also something that struck Donna Chung, one of West Australia's leading domestic violence experts.
That is unusual. Often, in fact, magistrates will say, no, I'm not including the children on that because I'm not convinced that that person is a danger to the children.
Donna, who's a professor of social work at Curtin University, says it's been difficult to shift judges' view on domestic violence.
Across the judiciary, there's really variable levels of knowledge and understanding of family and domestic violence, and also, stereotypes in people's minds about what a dangerous perpetrator looks like.
And do you think, Donna, that the magistrates also sort of live in fear that they're going to make the wrong decision and be that magistrate that, didn't protect a woman?
Yeah, that's right. And or similarly, they didn't put, strong enough conditions on an order, and so someone then went and assaulted either that person or someone else. And the trick is, I guess, how do we make sure we get that key information across to the courts in a really efficient way that's timely for the protection order?
We know from speaking with people in the domestic violence sector that when the final hearing comes, a completely different picture can emerge that was not told by the applicant in the initial hearing. But there are few, if any, cases where there are repercussions for an applicant when they have been found to omit evidence. As for the magistrate's role, the WA law lists the things that they must consider when granting someone a restraining order. The law says their top priority should be protecting people, especially children, from family violence. But the law was also written with the issue of misidentification in mind. It says magistrates must work out who is the person most in need of protection. We would love to find out if the magistrate in Robbie's case made inquiries about whether he was, indeed, the person most in need of protection. But we can't because the court has refused us access to the transcript twice. In the past 6 months, we have been in a kind of battle with the WA court system, and for the most part, we have not been winning.
After each hearing, I'd call Mel with an update. I'm sure she began to predict my opening line.
Hey Mel.
Hey Carla.
I'm just leaving court. I am furious.
I'm walking out of the magistrate's court.
Very frustrating. So basically...
That was... I just feel so angry. I'm so frustrated.
We wanted to get transcripts of Robbie's other recent cases. For example, not long after he got custody of the youngest children, Robbie pled guilty to having unsecured firearm ammunition. There was also a reckless driving charge, But Magistrate Evan Shackleton seemed annoyed that we'd asked for the transcript. In fact, he wanted to notify Robbie about our application. This is highly unusual because the principles of open justice mean that the media has a right to ask for court transcripts where the hearing has taken place in open court. And ones where the person has pleaded guilty are normally pretty uncontroversial and rarely require notification of any party to the matter.
So we had this situation where Virginia had 2 of her kids taken from her without her being notified or being able to attend the hearing, but Robbie was notified when we applied for a transcript of his reckless driving charge. And that's how I came face to face with Robbie in a Perth courthouse.
Hey, Mel.
Hey.
I think Robbie's here in person.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you know, I literally was just then applying to get this family violence restraining order hearing released. So I was literally writing that as I looked up at him, and he looked up at me and we just stared at each other, and I just felt like, I was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm 90% sure it's him.
Okay.
Which is, yeah, I mean, I'm a bit surprised, to be honest. He hasn't appeared at any of the...
We'd contacted Robbie before this day, but we hadn't heard back. Robbie stayed out of the spotlight and he's had a strained relationship with the media, understandably so, with all the unwelcome attention he and Virginia received over the years. But this was our moment to finally understand things from his perspective. If I could just get in front of him, maybe he'd want to answer our questions. I spotted him standing in the hall near the courtroom with his lawyer. He was wearing black pants and a white dress shirt. His rolled-up sleeves exposed an oversized gold watch, maybe a Rolex, but I'm no watch expert. He's sturdy and short with a freshly shaved head and a little bit of facial hair and striking green eyes. I walked up to him and said, "Hi, Robbie?" He folded his arms and looked at me blankly. A few seconds passed. He didn't say anything except stare at me, unmoving. It was awkward. So I told him I was a journalist and I was working on a story and I'd contacted him earlier and I'd love to speak with him. But his lawyer, Daniel Mezger, cut me off mid-sentence and said, "Anything you'd like to say can be said in the courtroom." I looked at Robbie and he still had that same enigmatic look. I couldn't read him. I said thank you and sat down. When I glanced up, they were both laughing and shaking their heads.
We couldn't get anyone in charge of the justice system to answer our questions about the restraining order on Virginia. We asked WA's Attorney General, Chief Magistrate and Chief Justice, but they all declined to be interviewed. Even the Commissioner for Victims of Crime refused to comment. Eventually, the court issued a statement saying that all magistrates followed the law, and it was inappropriate to comment on an individual matter, particularly interim family violence restraining orders, which are heard in private and with untested allegations. But let's go back to Virginia and Cheryl as they hotel hopped around Perth. At one point, Virginia was interviewed again by police about the Dunsborough incident. This time, the police were from Perth.
With the police, what was your impression, Cheryl, about their investigation? And what was Virginia saying about it?
She wasn't happy with it. Look, she had 2 female officers who interviewed her and they were very good. They were extremely good. But then a guy stepped in. He was like, oh, yeah, these things happen every day, more or less. He just wanted to brush it off. So I was not impressed.
We asked Cheryl why she thought nothing came of the police investigation into the Dunsborough incident.
The children had apparently said to the police that Mum inflicted those injuries on herself.
The 2 domestic violence experts we spoke to, Donna Chung and Heather Douglas, say police need to exercise caution when talking to children that may have been in a controlling environment.
Their account is going to be quite supportive of the coercive parent.
There were other parts of the police investigation that concerned the experts. Heather Douglas points out that police could have misidentified Virginia back in December 2024. That was when she was given a temporary violence order for lashing out. You'll remember that this is the order that Robbie cited on his application to the magistrate.
I can see that police are focusing there on a physical incident, and we know that's easier to do, like you can see it, but that kind of lashing out is part of a broader context. And perhaps if the police had known the broader context of the violence in that relationship, they may have made a different, maybe a better decision in that specific context.
In our background conversations with police and advocates, we've found a reluctance for police to see domestic violence as a crucial part of their job, even though nearly 3 in every 10 offenders they deal with is a domestic violence abuser.
I think a lot of police go into policing thinking that they're going to be leaping over fences with guns at the ready, chasing after nasty criminals. But we know that over half of policing is domestic and family violence, and much of the other half is mental health issues, and some of it overlaps. So that's the reality of modern policing, and I think we need to have a police service that is trained up to appreciate that and to deal with that and to be aware of the latest research and understanding of those kinds of questions.
The WA Police have declined to talk to us about their investigation into the January 9 incident or give us any access to body-worn camera footage or incident reports. They cite the possibility of a coronial inquest into Virginia's death. The head of WA Police, Commissioner Cole Blanche, did not agree to be interviewed, but we did speak to another officer, Superintendent Andrew Wilson. He would not talk about Virginia's case, but told us that police are now trained to identify the primary aggressor when they show up at a domestic violence incident. He said police have access to a lot more information on their phones now, but he admitted that they don't always put a 72-hour restraining order on the right person. He said that they are thinking more about coercive control and a trauma-informed approach. Superintendent Wilson told us that anyone can request a review into a domestic violence investigation, so we requested that the police review their investigation into the January 9 incident. We had lots of questions about the police investigation. For example, why weren't Virginia's injuries examined by forensic specialists, a service that's available to domestic violence victims in other states? We found out that there is a service like this in WA, but it only operates as a limited pilot program. But Commissioner Blanche declined our request, saying that this was the job of the Ombudsman or the Corruption and Crime Commission. Virginia's brothers then requested a review. Here's Sky.
We have to keep putting it back on the police department that responded to the scene and saw her beaten, bruised, and we have to ask for that report and ask them for transparency. I mean, she could barely walk, first off. There's physical evidence that points towards Virginia being abused. There's the photos, there's the medical records, and she was mentally sound. But the physical part, that's my biggest piece here. The bruises don't lie.
It seemed the police were not keen to look at their investigation, but in June 2026, under questioning from politicians in Parliament, the Commissioner revealed a change of heart after the family had written to him.
This is about a very sensitive matter. The Virginia Giuffre Commissioner, now, are you confident that police responded to Virginia Giuffre's request for help in the months before her death?
Commissioner. Thank you. I simply don't know. We respond to over 100,000 family violence incidents every year, so I'd love to give assurance on every single one, but I can't. But that one will be subject to a review, and the coroner can also choose to do an investigation, as could the Ombudsman, which I believe has also been written to.
Thank you.
His answer was surprising to us, but also heartening. If the police were really willing to scrutinise their actions, Virginia's family could finally get some answers.
In the months after Virginia was served with a restraining order, she tried several ways to let her kids know that she was still there and that she loved them.
She was doing everything she could to get across to the kids. I mean, like the last 2 weeks of her life, I mean, she was changing the names on Netflix of like, Mommy sees you, Mommy loves you, like anything. She sent her daughter a song, and it was Hey There Delilah, because that was like their song.
Hey there Delilah, don't you worry about the distance, I'm right there. If you get lonely, give this song another listen.
Robbie reported Virginia to the police for sending this song, saying it breached the restraining order.
Listen to my voice, it's my disguise, I'm by your side.
Virginia wrote to her kids in her notebooks.
To the kids, every day that I don't see your faces has a little less light. The world is dimmer without you in it. It'll be all right. You'll always have a rainbow over your head, angels by your side, and God in your heart. I'm here for you, here and everywhere.
And she wrote about them on Instagram.
My beautiful babies have no clue how much I love them. I miss them so very much. I have been through hell and back in my 41 years, but this is incredibly hurting me, worse than anything else. Hurt me, abuse me, but don't take my babies. My heart is shattered, and every day that passes, my sadness only deepens.
That was March 22nd, 2025. 8 days later, she'd write another post, a cry for help that would ripple out across the globe.
I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time.
It's a social media post which has gained international attention.
For her life after a bus crash. Giuffre appeared to look bruised. She says
really
she's
bad
in kidney
bruising
failure.
all over the left side of her face.
Perhaps she doesn't have 4 days to live. Really weird stuff. Really weird.
In the next episode of Virginia.
I wound down my window and I looked out and I thought, my God, that was the bus that hit us.
I go knocked on the door. I'm like, hey, Jenna, I'm home. Like, you okay in there? Like, everything going all right? And no answer. And I was like, that's weird. She's not answering.
My sister was very adamant to us that she didn't want him to get a cent.
In a statement to us, Robbie's lawyer said that Virginia suffered significant mental health issues and over-reliance on prescription medication due to the pressure of being in the public eye. Quote, this may have led to Virginia's change of perspective. Robbie was limited in responding to, quote, various unfounded allegations for legal reasons, the statement says. But he and the children just want to, quote, remember Virginia as a loving wife and mother.
If you or anyone you know needs support, you can contact the National Sexual Assault, Domestic and Family Violence Counselling Service on 1800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732, Lifeline on 131-114, or Beyond Blue on 1300-224-636. Virginia is reported and hosted by Melissa Fyfe and Carla Hildebrandt. I'm Julia Carr-Catzel, and I was the executive producer on this series. Fact-checking by Mark White. Cormac Lally mixed the series. Thanks to our colleagues at The Age, Cass Knowlton and Andrew Wu for their voice acting. Thanks to Tammy Mills, Lisa Muxworthy and Tom McKendrick. Make sure you follow Virginia so you don't miss an episode. For bonus content, visit our websites, theage.com.au or smh.com.au. And you can send us questions, information and feedback to virginiapodcast@9.com.au. Virginia is a production of The Age, The Sydney Morning Herald, WA Today and Good Weekend magazine. Subscribe to support our independent journalism. Thanks for listening.